The morning sun rose over New Haven just like it had for the past 30 years. Elder stood on his balcony, watching the crystal spires catch the golden light. The city sparkled like a jewel against the green fields that stretched to the horizon. Everything was peaceful. Everything was perfect. Then the sky went dark. Looked up and saw them. Black shapes moving across the sun like a disease spreading through space. The ships were not like anything he had ever seen. They looked alive, with surfaces that pulsed and twisted. Behind them came more ships, and then more, until the entire sky was filled with darkness. "Elder," a voice called from behind him. "Elder." He turned to see running toward him. The young communications officer's blue skin was pale with fear. Her large eyes were wide as she tried to catch her breath. "What are those ships?" she asked, pointing at the sky. Touched her mind gently with his telepathy, trying to calm her fear, but he could not calm his own. "I do not know," he said, "but we must warn everyone." The first blast hit the northern district before they could move. A beam of burning plasma struck one of the crystal spires. The beautiful tower that had taken years to grow melted like ice in fire. It crashed down into the gardens below, crushing the meditation pools where children had played just hours before. People screamed, ran through the streets, their peaceful minds unable to understand what was happening. They had never known war. They had never needed to. "Sound the alarm," told. "Tell everyone to get to the underground shelters." More plasma beams fell from the sky. The ships moved closer and now could see them clearly. They were not ships built by any thinking mind. They were grown, like tumors in space. Organic metal and chitin formed their hulls. Strange lights pulsed along their sides like heartbeats. And from them came the invaders. They dropped from the sky in pods that cracked open like eggs when they hit the ground. What came out made blood turn cold. They looked like insects, but bigger than any creature should be. Their bodies were covered in black armor that seemed to move and shift. Their faces had too many eyes and mouths filled with sharp teeth. One of them saw on his balcony. It raised a weapon that looked like it was made of bone and fired. The plasma bolt missed his head by inches, melting the wall behind him. "Go," he shouted to, "get everyone to safety." Ran through his home, grabbing the emergency transmitter from his desk. As he moved, he could hear the sounds of his city dying. Buildings collapsed. People cried out in terror and pain. The beautiful gardens where his people had grown food for 3 decades burned under alien fire. He reached the communications center in the basement of the city hall. Was already there, her fingers moving over the controls with desperate speed. "I am sending messages to the other colonies," she said. "But Elder, these creatures, they are not just attacking us. Reports are coming in from all over the planet. They are everywhere." Felt sick. His people were farmers, teachers, artists. They had no weapons beyond farming tools. Their ships were built for exploration and trade, not war. How could they fight something like this? "What about the Galactic Council?" he asked. "Send a message to them." His face fell. "I tried. They say their fleets are too far away. It would take weeks for help to arrive." "And the Federation?" "They are debating what to do." Debating. While his people died, the great powers of the galaxy sat in their council chambers and talked. Wanted to scream, but his people needed him to be strong. Above them something exploded. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. "Elder," a voice called from the stairs. A farmer named stumbled down, his arm bleeding. "They have reached the children's district, the shelters. Some of them are not deep enough. These creatures have weapons that can burn through solid rock." Closed his eyes. In his mind he could feel the terror of his people, mothers hiding with their bobbies, children crying in the dark, old ones too weak to run, waiting for death to find them. "Is there no one," he whispered, "no one in the galaxy who will help us?" Looked at her instruments. Her fingers stopped moving over the controls. She was listening to something. "Wait," she said. There is one more signal I can try. It is very far away, a system called Earth. Earth had never heard the name. The humans said, I have heard stories about them. They are different from the other species. Some say they are dangerous. Others say they are the only ones who still remember how to fight. Send the message, said without hesitation. His hands moved over the controls. She sent the signal out into space, toward a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy, a world that most civilized species avoided. Message sent, she said, but Elder, even if they receive it, even if they want to help, they are so far away. Another explosion shook the building. This one was closer. Through the small window, could see fires burning across his beautiful city. The crystal spires that had taken generations to grow lay broken in the streets. One of the creatures appeared at the window. Its many eyes looked down at them. It raised its weapon, grabbed and pulled her away just as plasma melted through the wall where they had been standing. They ran deeper into the tunnels, joining the stream of refugees fleeing toward the deepest shelters. Behind them, New Haven burned. The gardens his grandfather had planted turned to ash. The libraries where 1,000 years of wisdom were stored collapsed into rubble. The schools where children learned about peace and harmony filled with smoke. In the depths of the shelters, surrounded by weeping families and wounded farmers, Held's hand as she tried again and again to reach someone, anyone who might come to save them. Please, she whispered into her transmitter, sending the message toward distant Earth. If anyone can hear this, we need help. We are dying. Above them, the swarm continued their work of destruction, turning a world of peace into a world of ash and sorrow. And in the darkness of space, a small signal traveled toward a blue world where a species called humanity was about to learn that someone needed their help. The signal reached Earth's Luna base at 3:47 hours, Terran Standard Time. Communications Officer Lieutenant Hayes was drinking his third cup of coffee when the transmission came through. He had been expecting reports from the mining colonies in the Tau system, not a desperate plea for help from halfway across the galaxy. He listened to the message 3 times before he believed what he was hearing. Then he ran. Admiral Sarah was in her quarters, reviewing supply reports, when Hayes burst through her door without knocking. In 30 years of service, she had never seen the young officer look so shaken. "Ma'am, you need to hear this," Hayes said, holding out the recording device. It came in on the emergency frequency. Pressed play and listened to the alien voice speaking broken standard English. The fear in the transmission was clear, even across species lines. By the time the message ended, was already reaching for her secure communicator. "Get me General at Fleet Command," she ordered. "Priority 1." Within 10 minutes, the war room at Luna Base was filled with officers. Holographic displays showed the 442 system in detail. Red indicators marked the alien fleet positions. The numbers were not good. "Estimated enemy strength?" asked. Commander Brooks consulted his tablet. Initial scans show at least 200 ships in the system. Unknown class, unknown capabilities. The report complete orbital superiority. "What about our assets in the region?" "Nothing close enough, Admiral. The nearest fleet units are the 7th Squadron at 128. Even at maximum burn, they are 12 days out." Studied the display. 12 days. The aliens would be dead long before then. Around the table, her officers waited for orders. She could see the problem in their eyes. It was too far, too many enemies, too little time. "What about the 3rd Expeditionary?" she asked. Major Jack Torres stepped forward. His cybernetic leg made a soft whirring sound as he moved. The prosthetic was a souvenir from the campaign, where he had led a company of Marines against impossible odds and somehow won. "The Devil Dogs are ready for immediate deployment, Admiral," Torres said. "Full combat load. We can launch in 6 hours." "Jack, it is 1 battalion against an entire invasion fleet." Torres smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Ma'am, those aliens picked the wrong species to mess with, and they definitely picked the wrong planet to attack when humans are watching." Looked around the room. The other alien species in the galaxy always thought humans were too aggressive, too quick to fight. They preferred to talk, to negotiate, to find peaceful solutions. But sometimes there was no time for talk. "Do we even know what we are up against?" asked Commander Brooks. "Intelligence has some data," replied Captain Vance from the Xenobiology Department. He activated another display showing grainy images of the attackers. "The swarm. They have hit 6 systems in the past 2 years. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They strip worlds of all biological material and move on." "Like locusts," Torres muttered. "Exactly like locusts, Major, but worse. They adapt quickly to resistance. Each attack they learn from the last." Admiral made her decision. "Major Torres, prepare your Marines for immediate deployment. This is a combat drop with minimal support. Your mission is to reach those civilians and hold until reinforcements arrive." "Understood, Admiral. What about the other galactic powers? Any chance of support?" His face darkened. "They are studying the situation. The Federation wants to explore diplomatic solutions. The Rigel Collective is debating whether intervention violates their neutrality treaty." "While people die," Torres said. "While people die," agreed. "So it is up to us again." Torres saluted and headed for the door. He had a war to prepare for. The hangar bay of Luna Base exploded into activity. The 3rd Expeditionary Force was nicknamed the Devil Dogs for good reason. They were the Marines who got called when the situation was hopeless and someone needed to do the impossible anyway. Torres walked among his troops as they prepared their equipment. Sergeant Maria Santos was checking demolition charges with the care of a surgeon. Corporal was loading tungsten rounds into his rifle, each bullet designed to punch through heavy armor. Private Anderson, barely 19 and looking even younger, was painting something on his helmet. "What is that, Anderson?" Torres asked. The kid looked up, nervous. "My little sister's name, sir. She is about the same age as some of those alien kids we are going to save." Torres nodded. That was what made humans different. They fought for strangers like they were family. "Listen up," Torres called out. The hangar fell silent. 200 Marines looked at their commanding officer. "In 6 hours we launch for 442, Torres said. "The mission is simple. Get to the surface. Find the civilians. Keep them alive until help arrives. The enemy has orbital superiority, unknown numbers, and home field advantage." Some of the Marines grinned. They liked bad odds. "Intel says these bugs are smart, organized, and they do not quit. They have weapons that can melt rock and ships that heal themselves. They outnumber us by at least 50 to 1. More grins. "Any questions?" Sergeant Santos raised her hand. "Sir, do we get to kill all of them, or do we have to leave some for the reinforcements?" The hangar erupted in laughter. Torres smiled. His Marines were ready. Someone shouted from the back. The entire battalion responded. As the Marines loaded onto their assault ships, Admiral watched from the observation deck. Each transport carried 25 troops and enough firepower to level a small city. The ships themselves were designed for one purpose: getting Marines into combat zones that no one else would dare enter. "Think they can do it?" Commander Brooks asked. Thought about the last time someone had bet against human Marines. The Battle of Wolf 359, when a single company had held off an entire pirate fleet until the cavalry arrived. The Siege of, where Marines had fought in vacuum suits to save a space station. The campaign, where Torres himself had earned his artificial leg. "Brooks," she said, "those aliens just made the worst mistake in their species' history. They attacked civilians when humans were listening." The first transport launched, followed by the second, then the third. Soon, the entire Devil Dog Battalion was racing through space toward a distant world where children hid in the dark while monsters hunted them. In the communications center, Lieutenant Hayes monitored the long-range channels. The Galactic Council was still debating. They were forming committees. The Federation was discussing the legal implications of intervention. And 200 human Marines were preparing to drop into hell to save people they had never met. The Terran fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the 442 system 3 days after the first distress call. What they found made even veteran spacers sick to their stomachs. Captain, commanding the destroyer TFS Indomitable, stared at his tactical display in horror. The beautiful blue-green world that intelligence photos had shown was now wrapped in smoke and fire. Orbital bombardment had turned entire continents into burning wastelands. "Jesus Christ," whispered his weapons officer, "they are glassing the whole planet." The fleet hung in space like a disease. Their bioships pulsed with organic light, feeding on the destruction below. Some of the larger vessels were extending tendrils down into the atmosphere, actually drinking the smoke and ash from the burning world. "Contact Major Torres," ordered. "Tell him the situation is worse than we thought." In the troop transport Fury, Major Torres studied the tactical data while his Marines prepared for combat. The plan had been simple: punch through the enemy fleet, land near the capital, and fight their way to the civilian shelters. But the capital was gone. Satellite imagery showed only a crater where New Haven used to be. "Change of plans," Torres announced over the comm system. "Intelligence has located secondary shelter sites in the mountain ranges. That is where we are going." Sergeant Santos looked up from checking her rifle. "How many bugs between us and the friendlies, sir?" "All of them, Santos, all of them." The space battle began when they detected the human ships. Biovessels turned toward the newcomers, their weapon pods opening like flowers blooming in hell. Plasma beams reached across space, trying to burn the Terran fleet before it could close distance. But human warships were built for war, not harvesting planets. The destroyer TFS Valkyrie fired the first shot, sending a nuclear torpedo into the closest bioship. The alien vessel tried to heal the damage, but tungsten fragments from the warhead kept tearing new holes in its hull faster than it could regenerate. "All ships, execute Pattern Delta," Admiral commanded from her flagship. The Terran vessels spread out, using their superior speed to avoid the slow-moving but powerful alien plasma weapons. The bioships adapted quickly. They began working together, creating overlapping fields of fire that made approach impossible. For every alien ship the humans destroyed, 2 more moved to fill the gap. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the Marines need a clear approach to the planet. At current rate, it will take 6 hours to clear a path." 6 hours they did not have. The orbital bombardment was accelerating. Soon there would be nothing left to save. "Send them in now," ordered. "All ships, concentrate fire on the northern approach vector. Give those Marines a hole to jump through." The Terran fleet threw everything they had at one section of the alien blockade. Nuclear torpedoes, kinetic kill vehicles, and particle beam weapons focused on 20 bioships, overwhelming their ability to heal and adapt. For exactly 90 seconds, there was a clear path to the planet. "Go, go, go," Torres shouted. 8 transport ships dove toward the planet at maximum acceleration. Behind them, the fleet closed the gap and began pursuit. Plasma beams reached out, trying to cook the Marines before they could reach the surface. The transport St. Mary took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. 25 Marines died instantly. The War Pig lost its engines and began a controlled crash toward the planet's surface. The remaining 6 ships kept diving, racing the alien weapons to the safety of the atmosphere. Torres felt his stomach drop as the Fury hit the upper atmosphere at combat speed. Around him, Marines checked their weapons one last time. Some prayed, others told jokes. A few just stared at nothing, thinking about home. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced. Through the small windows, tours could see the planet rushing toward them. What had once been green forests was now gray ash. Rivers ran black with soot. The beautiful crystal cities they had built were broken stumps poking out of the devastation. 10 seconds. The Marines stood and grabbed their drop harnesses. Each man carried enough firepower to destroy a city block. It would not be nearly enough. Drop, drop, drop. The transport's belly opened, and 200 Marines fell toward hell. Tors plummeted through the burning sky in his drop pod, watching the ground rush up to meet him. His heads-up display showed friendly contacts scattered across 50 square kilometers. The other Marines were landing all around him, but the enemy had spread them out too much. His pod hit the ground hard, crushing the remains of what had been a school. Tors kicked open the hatch and rolled out with his rifle ready. The first thing he noticed was the smell. Burning organic matter and something else, something alien and wrong. "Sound off," he called over the radio. "All squads report." The responses came back slowly. 3rd Squad had landed in a crater and was taking heavy fire. 5th Squad was scattered but moving toward the rally point. 7th Squad had only 4 Marines left after their transport was hit. And everywhere the enemy was waiting. Tors saw his first warrior as it emerged from the ruins of a home. The creature was 3 meters tall, covered in black chitin that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Its face was a nightmare of too many eyes and a mouth full of razor teeth. The Marine raised his rifle and put 3 tungsten rounds center mass. The alien staggered but did not fall. Green blood leaked from the wounds, but the creature kept coming. "Tough bastards," Tors muttered, switching his rifle to full auto. The second burst took his head off. This time it stayed down. "All Marines be advised," he called over the radio. "Multiple hits required. These things do not go down easy." A plasma beam sizzled past his head, melting the wall behind him. Tors dove for cover as more warriors appeared from the ruins. The aliens moved with insect-like coordination, but they were not used to fighting an enemy that shot back effectively. Private Anderson's voice crackled over the radio. "Major, I found them. I found the survivors." Tors looked at his tactical display. Anderson's signal was coming from 2 kilometers away in what used to be a park. "Report, Anderson." "Sir, there are maybe 50 hiding in a cave system. Kids, old people, some wounded adults. They say there are more groups scattered throughout the mountains." "Can you hold position?" "Sir, negative. I count at least 20 bugs moving toward my location. They will be here in 10 minutes. Tors looked around at the burning landscape. His Marines were scattered, outnumbered, and cut off from support. The enemy controlled the air and had unlimited reinforcements. It was exactly the kind of situation the Devil Dogs were trained for. "All squads converge on Anderson's position," Tors ordered. "We have civilians to protect." Through the smoke and ash, 200 human Marines began moving toward their first group of alien refugees, ready to do what they did best: stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. The Crystal Gardens of New Haven had once been a place of meditation and peace. Families would walk among the singing trees and floating sculptures, teaching their children about harmony with nature. Now the gardens were a killing ground. Major Tors crouched behind the remains of a shattered fountain, studying the terrain ahead. They had turned the beautiful park into a fortress. Alien warriors moved between the twisted metal that had once been art, using the ruins for cover. Above them, larger creatures that looked like flying spiders watched for movement. "Count," he asked Sergeant Santos, who was lying next to him with a pair of binoculars. 30 ground units visible, probably twice that many hiding, she reported. "And those flying things, I count 12 of them." Tors checked his ammunition. Half his Marines were already running low, and they had been fighting for only 6 hours. They seemed to have unlimited numbers, and they kept getting smarter. The aliens were learning from every engagement, adapting their tactics in real time. "Sir," Private Anderson whispered over the radio, "the civilians are getting scared. The little ones keep asking when the bad things will go away." Torres felt something twist in his stomach. Through the smoke, he could see the cave entrance where 50 refugees waited in the darkness. Children who had never seen violence before today. Elders whose minds could not comprehend why anyone would want to hurt others. "Tell them we are working on it, Anderson," Torres replied. A plasma beam melted the top of his cover, sending molten crystal splashing in all directions. They had spotted them. Torres rolled to his right as another beam turned his previous position into slag. "Movement left," Corporal called out, "Big one." Torres looked and felt his blood run cold. The creature coming toward them was twice the size of the regular warriors. Its armor was thicker, and it carried a weapon that looked like it could punch through a tank. Worse, it was leading a group of smaller aliens that moved with perfect coordination. "Elite unit," Santos breathed. "They sent the varsity team." The big alien raised its weapon and fired. The plasma beam was so intense it turned sand into glass where it hit. Torres dove behind another piece of wreckage as the creature advanced. "All squads, we need to move now," Torres called over the radio. "They are bringing up heavy units." But as the Marines prepared to advance, something unexpected happened. One of the refugees came out of the cave. It was an old alien, his blue skin marked with the white patterns of age. He walked slowly toward the battle, seemingly unaware of the plasma fire flying overhead. Torres started to shout a warning, but then the old did something impossible. He spoke to the warriors with his mind. Torres felt it too, a gentle touch in his thoughts. Images flowed through his consciousness. The garden as it had been, children playing, families picnicking under the singing trees. The mental contact was warm, peaceful, filled with love and sorrow. For a moment, they stopped shooting. The alien warriors stood motionless, their weapons lowered, as if trying to understand what they were experiencing. The old continued his mental broadcast, showing them memories of what this place had been before the war. Then the moment broke. The lead warrior raised its weapon and shot the old alien down. But that moment had been enough. Torres and his Marines were already moving. "Santos, take that big one down," Torres shouted, firing his rifle on full auto. Sergeant Santos pulled the pin on a high-explosive grenade and threw it with the accuracy of a Major League pitcher. The explosion sent the elite warrior stumbling backward, its thick armor cracked and leaking green blood. The Marines poured fire into the gap, tungsten rounds punching through alien flesh and chitin. But for every they killed, 2 more appeared from the ruins. "Sir, we cannot hold here," Corporal called out. "Too many of them." Torres looked back at the cave where the refugees waited. Among them was a small child, maybe 6 years old by human standards. The kid was peeking out from behind a rock, watching the battle with huge, frightened eyes. The child reminded Torres of his own nephew back on Earth. Same age, same curiosity, same innocence that needed protecting. "Like hell we cannot hold," Torres growled. "Marines, remember why we are here." He stood up in the middle of the firefight and charged the nearest group of warriors. It was tactically insane, a move that should have gotten him killed instantly. But sometimes crazy was what the situation called for. The aliens were so surprised by the frontal assault that they hesitated for just a second. That second was all Torres needed. His rifle spoke 3 times in rapid succession, dropping 3 warriors before they could react. The rest of his Marines followed their commanding officer's lead. 200 human soldiers rose from cover and charged into overwhelming enemy fire, not because they had any chance of winning, but because there were innocent people behind them who needed protection. The watching from the cave had never seen anything like it. In their culture, violence was avoided at all costs. Conflicts were resolved through discussion and mental sharing. The idea of deliberately choosing to fight when outnumbered was completely foreign to them. But as they watched the human Marines advance into certain death to protect strangers, something changed in their understanding of the universe. Elder, who had survived the initial attack on New Haven, reached out with his telepathy to touch the minds of the fighting humans. What he found there amazed him. Fear. The Marines were terrified just like anyone would be. But alongside the fear was something else, something that burned brighter than their terror. A determination to protect others, even at the cost of their own lives. A willingness to stand between evil and innocence, no matter the odds. "They are not like us," he whispered to the other refugees. "They do not fight because they enjoy it. They fight because someone must." Private Anderson took a plasma hit to the shoulder but kept advancing. Corporal ran out of ammunition for his rifle and drew his sidearm, continuing to fire one-handed while his other arm hung useless at his side. Sergeant Santos used her last grenade to bring down one of the flying creatures, even though the explosion left her temporarily deaf and bleeding. None of them retreated. None of them abandoned their position. They began to fall back. It was not because the humans were winning. The Marines were still outnumbered 10-1, still taking terrible casualties. But the aliens had never faced an enemy that would not break, would not run, would not abandon the helpless when things got desperate. The war mind, evolved over millions of years to crush civilized species, had no answer for humans who simply refused to quit. As the sun set over the burning planet, the Marines held their ground around the cave entrance. Half of them were wounded. All of them were running low on ammunition. Tomorrow would bring fresh alien reinforcements. But tonight, 50 civilians slept safely because 200 humans had decided that some things were worth dying for. Dawn brought no relief. Major Torres watched through his binoculars as more ships landed in the distance, disgorging fresh troops. The aliens had learned from yesterday's fighting. Now they brought heavier weapons, thicker armor, and new tactics designed specifically to counter human strategies. Torres had 47 Marines left, 47 soldiers against an army that numbered in the thousands. His ammunition was nearly gone. His wounded were running out of medical supplies, and orbital bombardment had cut off all hope of reinforcement. But the civilians were still alive. That had to count for something. "Sir," Sergeant Santos said, crawling over to his position. Her left arm was in a makeshift sling, and she had burns across half her face. "Long-range communications are picking up chatter. Fleet is moving into position for final bombardment. They plan to glass this entire region in 6 hours. 6 hours. Torres looked back at the cave where the refugees huddled. In the past day, more survivors had found their way to the marine perimeter. There were now over 200 depending on his soldiers for protection. Men, women, children, elders, all of them looking to humanity to save them from extinction. "Any word from the fleet?" Torres asked. Santos shook her head. "Admiral's ships are still fighting in orbit. They are outnumbered 3-1 up there. Even if they break through, it will be too late." Torres closed his eyes. This was how it ended then. Not in a blaze of glory, but in a hopeless last stand in a burning garden on an alien world. His Marines would fight until the last bullet was fired, and then they would fix bayonets and charge into the darkness. It was not the worst way to die. "Gather the squad leaders," he ordered. "We need to plan our final defense." But before the meeting could begin, something unexpected happened. Elder emerged from the cave, followed by a dozen other adults. The old alien walked slowly toward Torres, his large eyes filled with determination. "Major Torres," said in careful English, "we would like to help." Torres stared at him. "Elder, with respect, your people are not fighters. This is what my Marines are trained for." "You are correct," replied. "We are not fighters, but we are not helpless either. Yesterday you showed us what courage looks like. Today perhaps we can show you what wisdom looks like." The old alien placed his hand on Tor's shoulder. Suddenly, the Marine's mind was filled with images. Not memories this time, but plans. Tactical information that they had been gathering through their telepathic network. The locations of every unit within 50 kilometers. The timing of their attack patterns. The weak points in their coordination system. Information that would have taken human intelligence hours to collect, delivered in seconds through mental contact. How, Tors asked. "We cannot fight," explained, "but we can listen. Our minds can reach places your instruments cannot. We have been watching our enemies, learning their patterns." One of the younger stepped forward. It was the communications officer who had sent the original distress signal. "Major, there is more. We found something the do not know we know. Their hive coordination depends on a central node, a queen creature in the largest ship." Tors felt hope stir in his chest. "You are talking about cutting off the head of the snake." "Exactly, but the queen is heavily guarded. It would be, how do you say it, a suicide mission." Tors looked at his Marines, then back at the elders. An impossible plan began forming in his mind. Impossible, but not hopeless, not if they worked together. "Elder," he said slowly, "how many of your people can maintain mental contact with my Marines during combat?" "All of us who remain. Why?" Tors smiled for the first time in 2 days. "Because I have an idea that is either brilliant or completely insane." The final battle began at noon. They came in waves, confident that their overwhelming numbers would crush the last human resistance. They expected to find demoralized Marines making a desperate last stand. Instead, they found something new. The humans fought with impossible coordination. They knew exactly where each attack was coming from before it began. Marines repositioned just seconds before plasma bombardment hit their previous locations. Ambushes that should have been perfect failed because the humans seemed to read minds. What the aliens could not know was that they were fighting two species working as one. Telepaths shared tactical information instantly across the battlefield, while human Marines used that knowledge to deadly effect. "Left flank 30 seconds, called out, her mind linked to a network of observers. Sergeant Santos was already moving, positioning her last demolition charge exactly where the assault would be strongest. When the aliens arrived, they walked into a trap that killed 20 warriors in a single explosion. But the real objective was not the ground battle. While they focused on crushing the Marine perimeter, Tors and a volunteer squad of 8 Marines were already moving toward their true target. The Queen's ship had landed in the ruins of what had been New Haven city center. It was a massive bioconstruct, pulsing with organic lights as it coordinated the entire invasion. Getting inside would require crossing 2 kilometers of open ground swarming with alien troops. It was impossible. But Tors had learned something in the past few days. Sometimes impossible was just another word for difficult. Guided by telepaths who could see through alien eyes, the Marine squad moved like ghosts through the battlefield. They used drainage tunnels, building ruins and crashed ships for cover, following a path that existed only in the shared consciousness of the telepathic network. When they finally reached the Queen's ship, Tors had only 3 Marines left. Corporal, who had been fighting for 36 hours with a shattered arm. Private Martinez, whose helmet had been cracked by plasma fire. And Private Anderson, still carrying the picture of his little sister on his chest. "This is it," Tors whispered into his radio. "If we do not come back, tell Admiral that the Devil Dogs completed their mission." The 4 Marines charged into the alien ship, weapons blazing. The Queen was waiting for them in the ship's heart, a creature the size of a small building surrounded by warrior guards. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the Marines were dead, but so was the coordination center of the entire invasion. Across the planet, alien warriors stopped in confusion as their hive-mind connection severed. Without central coordination, the fleet fell into chaos just as Admiral's reinforcements arrived in the system. The war was over. 3 days later, Elder stood in the ruins of New Haven's Memorial Garden. Around him, children played games they had learned from watching human Marines. Games about courage, sacrifice, and protecting others. A new crystal spire was growing in the center of the garden, this one different from traditional architecture. Carved into its base were the names of 147 human Marines who had died to save people they had never met. At the top of the spire, in both script and standard English, were the words, "They emerged from smoke and fire to stand between evil and innocence. The galaxy will remember." In the distance, Terran transport ships were landing, bringing supplies and aid workers. The humans had not just saved they had adopted them. Earth was offering citizenship, education, and a new home to any alien who wanted it. Touched the memorial stone and reached out with his telepathy, trying to sense some echo of the brave souls who had died here. He found nothing, but somehow that felt right. The Marines had completed their mission and moved on to whatever came next. But their example remained. In a galaxy where most species had forgotten how to fight for others, humanity had reminded everyone what heroism looked like. And in the shared consciousness of the people, the memory of human courage would be preserved forever, passed down through generations as proof that sometimes, when evil seemed unstoppable, ordinary people could choose to do extraordinary things. The smoke had finally cleared, and hope had emerged from the ashes.